Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another in the Sage CRM learning series. I'm David Beard and join me today and we'll be talking around the configuration basics of the product. This series, as you know, if you've attended any of them, is all about showing the breadth and the usage of the features available in the product. So whether you're new or looking to brush up on your skills, these sessions are all about helping you understand more if you're using the product or understanding the full potential of the product if you're new to it. I hope you're seated comfortably. This is a big session, this one. We're going to look at all sorts of things, and at times your head will be spinning, but that's okay because you can always review it again and, of course, take advantage of the longer learning out on YouTube and through our help.sagecrm.com subdomain. I'm going to be using my demo system as ever today and showing you screenshots from that. And this session is all about configuration basics. So tailoring the system with the built-in tools that are in the box. So how to change the look and feel, how to change fields and screens and lists and all sorts of things like that. This is part of helping you understand that breadth, as I mentioned earlier. And the emphasis today is very much on you don't need to be any sort of clever developer or coder. These are all clever things you can do with the tool straight from the box. First of all, I'm going to start looking at adding new fields. So I've logged in and I'm looking at a company summary screen. And imagine, if you will, I want to add two fields. One will be a company number. The other one will be a tax number. Now, because I've logged on as the admin person, I need to go into the administration screens. Nothing new if you've been on these sessions before. Off I hop into system admin. I need to add a new field, so I go into customization, second on the top left there, and down into the company entity because I want to add fields to the company summary screen. You can see a listing on the main chunk of the screen there of all the fields currently against this table, and the new button on the right-hand side, highlighted, allows you to start adding new fields. So let's do that. Let's add a new field. I'm going to keep it simple just to start with, and I want to add a simple one called, well, a text. And you can see with my drop-down, I can data type things in all sorts of ways, and I'll touch on a few of the different ones a bit later on as we go through, but that'll give you a feel for the entry types that are available. And you'll see as we run through the core, the front of the product, how these are all used in different ways. I'm going to keep my field as a text field, nice and simple. You see it's pre-filled the company table name. That's normal, company underscore or comp underscore. And you give it another name. So I'm going to give it an extra couple of letters, CRN, company number, something like that. It needs a caption, of course, so I've got to give it a name that will appear on the screen. This is the registration number. And that allows me to make sure that appears that's how it appears on the screen for the user. You need to have that in there, by the way. It's an important thing, not for the obvious reasons of, well, what's the field called? Because if you didn't, it would just potentially be blank or just hold the system name. But also, if you've got a multi-regional installation, multi-language or different areas of the world, you might have that name different. Even if it's in English, it might be called the company number in the UK versus the registration number in the US. So that lets you or gives you that flexibility. Now I've excluded it from quick find. I don't need necessarily to search on company registration number. It's a simple field. And the maximum length is good to me. I don't expect it to be any longer than 20. So that's fine. I'll click save. And now that's been added to the system. I want to add my second field now. And this second field is going to be that tax number. Again, I'm going to choose text field to be the default data typing, the entry type. Tax number is the field name itself. And there's my caption name, tax number. Again, happy with the other fields, exclude it from quick find like I did earlier. Let's have a look. So I now have my two fields added, reg number, tax number. And there they are on the screen. You'll see you've got your field name, field caption, I should say. That's the English name, for want of a better word. It appears on the screen. Then the field name next to that in the column, the technical name, and then the data typing appears there. Great, makes sense, good. Now, I need to put them somewhere because just creating them doesn't mean they're available. So let me put them somewhere right now. I'm going to use the fields in what's called the company box long. That's just the internal name of a particular screen. It's the main screen of the company summary page. So I'm going to click on Edit for that one. And on the left-hand side of the screen, as in to the right of the menus itself, but on the left-hand side, underneath Desktop HTML Screen Contents, is a list of what's currently on that screen. So there's about, 12 or so fields there at a quick glance. And on the right-hand side, under Properties, is the drop-down list of all the fields that could be there. And then I've got other boxes that allow me to do clever things about the positioning. Remember, of course, Sage CRM being a web or browser-based or browser-deployed tool means you've got sort of similar controls you'd expect to see in a web page. Is it in a table? There's a column, new row, new column, left, right, that sort of thing. So I'm going to drop out that field drop-down. You'll see there are my two particular new fields. So all I need to do is add them to the screen. And you can see in that one click there, I've shortened things down to make it easier to watch. But I've added the registration number on the left and the tax number on the left as well, both at the bottom of my screen there. I'll click Save. And now that's been done, I also want to use the field in a report or a group or a list. So if I go into reports, I'll add one of them into the report, and I'm going to choose the company list by type report. It's about 4 or 5, 6 down there in my list. If I go into edit mode, and you would remember this if you'd attended the previous sessions about how you build reports. If you haven't, by the way, they're available on demand. You can just go back and have a look again. And I'm going to add them in. So there are those two new fields again, reg number and tax number, and they're available for me to use. And then I drop them onto the report contents box in the middle of the screen there. You'll see them appearing at the bottom there, and click continue. And I'm happy with that, and click save, and And if I run the report, again, if you've seen this before, it's the same as I showed you in a previous session about running reports. There's my new column in my report, okay? Of course, it's empty right now, right? Because there's no data and I haven't put any data in that field. Let me close that window off and let me switch back to my company view. And I'll just use my quick lookup, as you've seen before in previous sessions, and I'll drop into a particular company and I'll go to Gatecom, and you'll see there are the new fields added simply and easily to that company box long. That was the internal name, which is the main screen. So you can see even before I go any further, how quick and easy that is to do. Create the field, give it a name, give it a data type, put it on a screen, hey presto, it's on the screen. That's the configurability of the product straight out of the box. And that works on any field, any screen, any entity, and so on. It all works the same right through the product. I could go ahead now and add some data into that, of course, if I wanted to, like that. And then you can see it's there. You can also take them out as well, but big pink flag across here. Make sure, like every system, that it's an irreversible thing. You can delete that field. So if you're tinkering, make sure you backed your database up and make sure users are out of the system before you do that. I'd highly recommend that you have a test system available to do all these things before you put them on your live system. In Sage CRM, because of its lightweight footprint, means you could have a test system just sitting on any old PC you've got knocking around that's just running a lightweight SQL Express engine. Doesn't have to be particularly powerful, but it's a good way of having a test system available for you. Right, I'm going to jump into admin and just delete those fields, okay? If I select the fields, hit the delete button on the right-hand side, and it will remind me that I can't actually delete it right now because it's in a report as well. So you'll get messages like this that tell you, well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. You'll get an information message if the field is in a list in a screen, so not that one, it'll be allowed. But if it's in a view or a report or a group, like this one is, you get this more red view, a more don't do this, and it won't be allowed. So just that's a quick overview of how that is managed by the system as well. So I have to take it out of the report before deleting it. But if I look at the other field, tax number, remember I only put registration number in the report. If I try and delete that, that's fine. I'm allowed to do that, and off it goes. And of course, obviously any data in that field is removed too, right? And you see, there it is. So it's disappeared off that screen now. I've got rid of them off my screens. So fairly straightforward there. Okay, I touched on the concept of data typing. What do I mean by that? Let me jump into a bit more detail on that, as I said I would. Allowing new fields means you can also type the fields. So I'm going to do, as I did before, add some more fields, but I'm going to add slightly different typing on each of them to give you an example of how they're used. So I'm back in my admin customization company area where I was before. I'm looking at the fields tab on the company table. So I'm going to create a few new fields here. So let me take you through these very quickly. First one, entry type and a name and a caption as I did before, right? So this time I'm going to choose an entry type or a data typing of advanced search select. When I do that, you'll see suddenly I've got a whole bunch more stuff to look at and to think about. All of this, by the way, how these work, what they do, what they're designed to offer to a user, is fully described in the documentation, the admin guide particularly, which is available on help.sagecrm.com. So don't forget that address. Everything we do in terms of provisioning and education and all sorts around the product, start with help.sagecrm.com. There's reams and reams of useful information for you. So back to my advanced search select. I'm going to create a new column name called Credit Check Agent, which is the credit check agency. And it's an advanced search select. I'll get my words around there. What does that mean? Well, advanced search select lets me pick up on another field that already exists in the system. That's clever because it means you don't have to have 5 or almost identical representations of something you might use, like company name or company lookup. You use it once, or you create it once more correctly, and then you call it again if you need to reuse it somewhere else. So what's clever about this as well, and those of you might have picked up on the yellow highlight, is I can also do other simple stuff to help filter or manage the way that new field, credit check agency, appears. In this particular example, if you think about Sage CRM itself, you can have the ability to tag records. So a company can be a customer, a prospect, a supplier, or other things. Notice I've put in the search SQL box there, company underscore type equal to supplier. So what I'm doing there is automatically using or creating a new lookup field based on an existing one, but filtering it on the fly. Now that makes sense. If you think about it, company credit check agency is in your system, quite possibly would be listed as a supplier. So it returns the rows that they are restricted. So you don't get a list of everybody in your database, you just get the ones called supplier. Now, perhaps in your business, you might have 3 or 4 that are credit check agencies. You could even create another one with the tag credit check agency, and then it would only return 3. But you get the idea. Let's click save on that. And now I can add a second field. My second field is going to be the date field, company credit check date, i.e. when were they last credit checked. Okay, that's a date field, fairly straightforward. Third one, maybe you want to give some sort of maximum credit allowance on your customer records. And that might influence the workflow, it might influence the account management style. So it could be both soft influencing or soft policing, as well as hard policing. It could be that you cannot raise a new quote in the system if the credit check maximum has been exceeded. All those things are possible. This is a currency field, so it allows me to define a maximum number. And I'm going to add my 4th field, and this one is a selection, and we'll have a new set of lookups defined. So rather than reusing, as I was with advanced earlier, I'm going to do new. And this will happen as I select save. So watch what happens here when I have the new lookup set. It then prompts me to say, right, before I save this field away, what do you want these drop-down values, lookup values, call it what you will, to actually be? So I'm going to drop some things in very quickly, very easily, probably quite boring, but you get the drift. I'm going to have a drop-down called A, a drop-down called, oh, I don't know, B, and C and D. So there you go. That's my drop-down contents of this new field called credit check rating, A, B, C, or D. And then I do that, and then I save it. Right, so there are my 4 fields created in QuickTime, but not much quicker than doing it for real. I'm just speeding it up for the purposes of today. And there they are. Credit check agency defined as an advanced search select, check date as a date only field, credit check maximum currency, and credit check rating ABCD. And that's what they look like. Right, we need to put them somewhere, right? just like we did last time. So let me add these fields to a screen. Now I've already created one, trust me, one I prepared earlier, called Company Credit Check. And I'll show you where that gets deployed in a second. So I'm going to drop my 4 fields in there, dunk, 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 do a bit of positioning with the new line, etc., on the right-hand side, save it. And that particular one is called from a tab, excuse me, called from a tab within the company screen. And I'm not going to go into the details of that one today necessarily, but just trust me, that's where it is. And see, there's my new screen that has those 4 values on it. And then if I go into edit mode, you can see credit check agency is that advanced search select. So when I click on the magnifying glass, this is what happens. It pre-filters and comes back and says, these are all the records of companies in your database that are known as suppliers. And that's how that field behaves. You've got date format field on the right-hand side, the numeric field for the maximum, and then the credit check on the right there. So that's done, and that's the way it's returned. And so now I've got this ability to add more rich information to that particular thing. And then, of course, you can go search on it based on all the usual things you expect to do. So this is a find opportunity screen. So you might go, well, I'm going to add the credit check status to that screen as well, perhaps. Or, you know, filter everything based on credit check amount, things like that. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about configuration basics and let's look at lists. This is part 2, not part 1. I'll fix that. Lists aren't just used as part of a find screen. This is a typical find opportunity screen, as I was highlighting earlier. But they're used in all sorts of places. So this is concept in the product of screens, which we've just shown you, editing an existing one and creating a new one called Credit Check. But let's look at where lists are put together. And they're just as configurable and easy to point and click as what you've seen so far. Lists are called from the context of all sorts of entities. Right now, I'm in the company entity, as you can see, and there's a list. So if I go to opportunities, so I've highlighted from the menu, the sub-menu at the top, opportunities, and that's a list. And that list is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. And it displays child information as well. So you could do other things with it. So the definitions of the lists are available for you to deploy. They're stored in the database and they're available to be deployed and reused anywhere. So an opportunity list is also used in the My CRM area. So here we are in My CRM. I've gone into My Opportunities and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, same list again, isn't it? It's also used in Team CRM. If I go to Team CRM, Opportunities, there it is again. Whether or not the list has any data in it, it's still used. So in this case, because the operational team doesn't have opportunities, the list is actually empty, but you still see how it's deployed in multiple places. Again, it's this reusability we talked about a bit earlier with the fields, but this time abstracted out to screen and list designs. All of the control about how the lists work and how they look is, unsurprisingly, I hope you realize, done inside the admin screen within customization. If you go into the area and we look at opportunity this time, so down the left-hand side, the green one, we go into customize that opportunity, and I go into the lists at the top. So far we've looked at fields and screens, but if I go into lists, here are the lists, and the second one down is the one I was referring to earlier. You've got other things called grids. There's a slight terminology difference. Grids are typically used in find screens. Lists are typically used in terms of contextual stuff like company, people, that sort of thing. But they work and pretty much do the same thing. Let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at the opportunity list itself. So the one I was looking at in a different context a moment ago. And you'll see there are the fields on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. Am I counting correctly? 9, I think. And here I have the ability to also, like you saw me earlier, adding new fields to a screen, well, I can add new columns to the list. So I could say, here are all the fields on the right. Which one of these do I want to appear on the left? And I can also then choose where it sits in that list on the left using these up and down arrows. And I can do all sorts of other clever stuff as well. Do I want that particular column to be sortable? Should it appear in a high to low or low to high? Does it hyperlink anywhere? Does it go to a result? You would have seen me in earlier sessions in a list, clicking on a record, having it take me to that record. That's what the hyperlinking is all about. You can also choose to have not the words appearing, but a picture, and that's the reason for show select as GIF in the bottom right of that red box. So there's lots of things you can do there to amp up the lists and make them do things differently. And each of these is detailed in great detail in the system documentation at help.sagecrm.com. Oh, by the way, it's also possible to add scripts, so you can get super clever. If that's not enough control, you can also write script in here. If you know your way around the scripting language, even a little bit, and there's lots of great examples out on the web, you can have a look if you're new to this. But in the same way I put a SQL clause into the field earlier, comp underscore equals supplier, you can take scripts here and do clever things. Now, that's not something I'm going to go into huge detail today. I might touch on something a little later on, but just take it from me. If you like script, if you're good at script, if you know someone who can help you with script, it gives you some clever stuff. It can control the behavior of a particular grid or list, depending on what data is presented, depending on the user that's logged in, depending on, well, all sorts of things. Anything you can interrogate within the system, you can do clever things with. Right, so I'm going to update that screen. If I made any updates, I didn't add anything, so in theory I could just click save in the top right, but if you do add a new field, you also have to update and just make sure that's actually stored. It's just the way the system runs. And once you change that list, save it, and then it changes the user interface. So I've popped back over here. Here I changed the order of the fields, excuse me, and add a new hyperlink. I didn't show that directly, but I have done it when I was creating this demonstration. I added a hyperlink to the person column. So it means not only could I clicked on the company record, I can't see a limited and be taken to it. Now I can click on the Thomas Beasley name and be taken directly to his record as well. Similar for the description, that takes me to the opportunity. Here's another example of configuration here. And I want to give you a simple example of how you could put this one to use. And this is sort of taking the idea of the scripting-ish, but defining another level of business rules. That's what's called a field level script. Here, you can see I'm logged on as Susan May, good old Susan, sales manager, and I'm looking at a list of opportunities she has that she's called from her My CRM menu. So for reference, top left corner, My CRM for Susan May, and the green underline shows we're in the opportunities area. See how this list contains a column that displays the name of companies to which the opportunity belongs. Makes sense, pretty straightforward. You've seen it in previous sessions. Okay, if we look at the team menu context, we can see that same list is used, as I said earlier, to display the opportunities assigned, in this case, to the team CRM for direct sales, the one that Susan is in as well. All right, so far so good. And like the My CRM context, this list contains the name of the company, just like you saw earlier. But let's switch to the company context. So let's go to Gatecom again and look at the opportunity list. And you see the same list is being used, right? And even displaying the company. But if you think about it, that's not very bright, is it? Because you're in the context of company anyway. Why do you need the company name? Okay, well, let's imagine we've decided we don't want to do that. We simply want to free up the real estate on the screen. So here's a swift and clever customization to remove this column, but only removing it as it renders to the screen in this context, in the company context of the opportunity list. So this is, again, reinforcing the point about you don't need to recreate things. You can reuse a based list, base grid, base screen, and just do cleverer things with it. And here's what you do. Back into admin. The system admin does this sort of thing, fine-tuning, in this case, the display of the list by adding what I would call a business rule that happens to take the form of a script. To do that, we go into customization for opportunities, and we go down into there, and we have a look at the list like we did earlier, and we have a look at opportunity list. That's the one we want to change. And from within the list, we can then change the property of the field company name. There are different properties that you can be set. Most properties are controlled by drop-down values, but you can also change these using the script, a bit like I was doing with the field earlier, right? The example properties could be allow order by, allow by descending or ascending, alignment left. So it's the same sort of functional things you saw me highlight on the screen on the right-hand side, but you can access them through the scripting language. Clever. That's how Sage CRM rolls. So on the right-hand side, bottom box, I've added some script. Don't worry if you don't understand this. Don't worry if you think, I never use it. That's okay. Doesn't matter. It just gives you, for those of you that are interested in the cleverer stuff in the product and maybe thinking about how you might flex things, this gives you the potential to do things. So we have a method there called the CRM get context info. Again, all this information is documented in help.sagecrm.com. The whole object model of the product is available, and you can understand how that works. And if you know your way around code, it's very straightforward. The developer guide in particular up on the community provides that API guide and advanced ways of doing things that I'm doing here. But anyway, the code I'm looking at here is assessing whether the list we're playing with is being rendered inside the context of a company. And if it is, then it will change that particular column. So in this case, company name, right? See top left corner, company name, to be lost, to disappear, or as it says on the screen, visible equals false. Okay, so what's that actually look like? Well, we save those changes, pop in here, and that's what it looks like. I'm in the same list you saw earlier that has the column called company name, but I'm in the context of a company and its opportunities, and the column, which would have been the second column across, has gone. And it's simply shifted everything along one to the left. So status person, whereas it used to be status company name person, all with a couple of lines of script on a reusable piece of screen design. Clean, elegant, minimalistic. Okay, let's have a look at some more screen customizations. Here, you can see I'm looking at the person summary screen within Sage CRM. I can change the layout of these fields very simply as the system administrator. Pages like this are built from, as I alluded to earlier, screens or screen definitions. So I'm going to change a few of the fields in maybe the top one. And to do this, I go into admin again, and I drop into customization again, sounding familiar, isn't it? And I go to person this time, right? I'm customizing person, so under the green opportunity, the blue person. And I want to change a screen, so I need to go to the Screens tab, top of the screen, currently fields underlined. I'm going to pop across to the Screens tab, and there are all the screens that are associated with the person entity, a few more than you saw on the other one before. How do I know which is the screen I want to change? Well, if you're doing this regularly, you'll know. You just go, oh yeah, that's that one. But if you don't know, actually the product makes it easier for you. You can turn on what we call inline customization. What does that mean? Well, if you turn that on and go back to the person summary screen, you'll see I've got little hyperlinks to customize each of the screens, little green messages that appear here. And it tells me I can then go ahead and customize in the front or the user experience viewpoint without having to do it from the admin area. And so if I click here, this is the screen I want to change, by the way, and I click customize screen, I get a little pop-out box that says, whoop, here you go, customize your life away. And that's the same customization or configuration screen you saw earlier in the admin area, popped out for me so I can just quickly do some edits on the fly. So I can do all the same things I was doing earlier. It's just done for me in a flyaway window that sits on top of where I am. So I can move fields in new locations. I can determine whether they appear on new lines or not. I can change the spacing of the fields, etc., etc. And there are other sorts of things, scripting and more that I can do, right? So make the changes, update the screen, add or remove fields, click save, and that'll commit the changes to the system. And then, ta-da, the new layout appears. So I didn't point out exactly what I was changing, but trust me, I changed a few and now they're different. And there's new layout. So very quick, very easy to do. and helpful to make sure that you do track and follow the right sort of things. I want to return to the admin screens, by the way. I'll show you something else, because I do need to turn off the inline to start with, but I'll jump into something else I'm calling screen customization part 2. And I want to look at a feature called the custom content box. And you might have noticed it on previous screens, albeit I didn't point out. So far, we've looked at different ways that screens can be customized in the admin area, fly-out windows like you saw earlier, bit of control over the script's positioning, the field's positioning on the screen, and indeed a bit of script control if you need it. You can see now I'm going to log in as the admin person, and I'm going to jump back into admin areas here, and I'm going into customization, and I'm going into customization to look at the person thing again. And I'm looking at system metadata. I haven't really covered the concept of metadata. I suppose I should pause a second and explain that. Whenever I make changes in the system, Sage CRM's design is such that the design of how a screen looks, how a list looks, how a field is described, they're all stored in the database too. There's a parallel set of tables called the metadata. These are tables that don't have customer data or prospect data, and they have system stuff. And the point of that is it makes it very easy for you to configure on the fly, like you've seen me doing. You don't need to change any core code. That's important because it's cleaner and easier and less risky, but it's also really important stuff for you as a customer when you're upgrading. When we release a new version of the product, we work and do changes and upgrades and improvements to the core code and the way the features work. What we don't do is ever, rarely, but usually never, touch the metadata, certainly not yours. So it does mean that when you upgrade, there is a 99, I just say that because there's always a chance, right? But there's hardly any chance, a 99% chance, that it will not touch anything that you've done in your system. All your screen designs will stay there, your lists will work the way they always used to work, and so on and so forth. And that's a key feature of the product and has been since the very beginning. I know personally, I have upgraded my own demonstration systems that have been many years old, and they come through unscathed. So it's a very powerful, clever design that has real business benefit for me as someone who demonstrates the product, but also to you as a customer. Anyway, back to where I was. So I'm in the person entity, I'm looking at the screens, and I want to do some more configuration and customization here. And I'm looking at the person entry screen. This is the screen where you go to add or edit a person's detail, their names, that sort of thing. It's called Person Box Long. I want to look at the custom content area. That's the box on the left-hand side underneath the fields. At its very simplest, it allows me to add any HTML that I want to appear in the screen. Why would I want to do that? Well, let me show you. So I've just put some really simple text in there, the hello world text that's appeared in that custom content screen. Not very exciting, but it shows what I'm trying to do. And then I save that screen. And once I save it and go back to the screen usage, I'll just pop out and go out to Gatecom, good old Gatecom again. And this time I'm looking at Simon, who works for Gatecom, and there's the text, right? Now, this really comes into its own, not with simple, stupid stuff like that, but where you want to add some more sophisticated HTML. Now, for those of you that go, oh, don't worry, again, one of those things, you don't have to use this. Most people don't, but it's there if you need it, and it lets you do some really funky stuff. Its most useful benefit to us is to use it for JavaScript storage. You can actually use it to call a script inside here. This particular one is doing a nice bit of business rule control, right? And you'll notice the particular script is containing a function. This function can be used on what's called an on-change field level script. For those of you that know your script or can at least pick through what's on the screen there, actually what I'm doing there is looking to see if any cases are lower. So someone's just typed in someone's name, all lowercase, or company name, all lowercase. And maybe we say, well, I want that to be automatically corrected by the system as they click save or as they move off the field. That's the sort of stuff you can do in a browser deployed environment using these HTML screens. So I'm going to take that script and add that into the custom content box inside of the fields. Rather than hello world, I'm going to change it and drop it in there, right? That's my script you saw earlier. And it's going to set some values, right? And it's going to, in particular, as I said, check this case, right? So don't worry about the detail, and I don't pretend to be a script junkie either. I just have a rough idea of how this one works, and I want to use it to demonstrate capability to you. So I'm going to pick that up, change it all around, I'm happy with that. And I'm going to combine that custom content and the script design such that when I go out, I'm able to achieve a greater range of control or configuration. So what does that look like? If I refresh my screen and I go to Simon Yaltoy again, so you see hello world's gone, right? So that's disappeared, good. That's what you expect. When I click on change, you can see the rule running. Watch carefully. If I now type in the name in uppercase and tab off the field, so all I'm still in edit mode on this screen, but I tab out to the next field, you see how it automatically corrects the case. I don't have to do anything. The system is managing that for me. And that's the sort of clever stuff you can do with script. And then why it matters is when you've got users who are maybe in a high volume call center, or they're really cracking through things quickly and they make mistakes but they can't go back, or you want some sort of control over your users and the way they keep the data looking clean and correct for formatting reasons, if nothing else, then that's a sort of simple thing you could just drop into the system like that, and you've immediately made a business rule. And from a user's perspective, it's a great feature, isn't it? They go, oh, I can just type any old case in and it doesn't matter, it comes out. So that's great. So you've seen the idea there that this idea of custom content allows you to add in all sorts of additional script, HTML, into the screen, which supports the implementation of business rules. So that custom content that I showed you earlier really helps you drive some clever stuff. And it could be a simple one like that, or it could be also pulling back or interrogating the system more generally. As I alluded to earlier with the comp_supplier, you can also call in the methods or the object model of the product itself to say, right, if I enter a field called, I don't know, revenue, I'm trying to think of a more intelligent, I should have thought of this earlier. Anyway, if I said, oh, I want to make sure that anyone who puts in a turnover of more than $1 million, it automatically gets account manager assigned to Fred because he's the guy who does the big accounts. You can have that automatically done. As soon as you fill in the revenue level on an entry of a new company record, it auto sets the account manager. Simple example. Could be anything like that. Or could be if they're in a certain region, it automatically goes to a certain account manager. So it saves the users typing. It enforces business rules, it keeps your data clean, it keeps things tidy. Let's crack on and have a look at something else. I did tell you it was going to be a bit of a ride today. One more thing, I think, in this case, and then we'll call it quits for today. In the example here, in the company entity context, we may only want to have the opportunity tabs displayed if the company is typed customer. So this is sort of the idea I had earlier, taking away a column, but taken to the next step, right? So here's the tab menu definition. Tabs across the top. Remember those? Summary, communication, person, opportunities. Right. I'm going to mess around with the tab. And I have this control, as you saw me earlier, I have the control over a field. So here are the tabs. Notice on the right-hand side, I've got this element of control. I'm going to enter a SQL clause, company_type equals customer. Essentially, what I'm saying is, show me the opportunities tab in a company context only if the company is a customer. And I guess that's a nice, clean, good user experience. Don't show me a tab where there's nothing in there. Why would I bother looking? You could do the same for cases. You could do this, well, you could do the same for anything. And you can interrogate and reuse and cleverly leverage all sorts of fields in the system. If I save that, and you'll see company type prospect, what do you notice about the tab layout at the top? Opportunities isn't there. It is there in the background, but it's not made visible. It's not rendered when that particular record is put up to the user. It is revealed when the company type is customer. And as I noted, you'd expect it to. SQL clauses can be more complex. You can get very clever. You could say, well, where company type equals customer or prospect, or it's in that list, or where company type equals customer and the company status is active. Maybe you want to not see opportunities if the company is listed, has bought something in the past, but is no longer active, etc., etc., etc. So you can do some really smart things in there. And if you know your way around SQL, well, the system's your oyster, or some other bending of a phrase like that. So that brings me to the end of this session. Lots of spinning material if you're new to it. Hopefully, if you are familiar with the product, it'll give you a whole bunch of interesting new thoughts about, well, maybe I could use it slightly differently than I am at the moment. Hopefully, whatever camp you're in, you've really seen the power and the simplicity at the same time of Sage CRM in operation. As you know, we're all about positioning Sage CRM as additive to your underlying Sage accounting or other product software to give you a great view of consistent customer data, reducing the need to rekey information back and forward and thus saving on effort, de-risking the idea that data gets corrupted on the way through, manually or otherwise, and putting you on the path to help you do more with your existing Sage investment. As I say time and time again, your accounting software helps your business plan and particularly account for and study transactional information. Back office, who have we sold to? What have we sold? What's the stock looking like? But my question, as always, is what's your plan for customer relationship management? How are you going to join together and provide the one-stop shop, that 360-degree view of information for your customers that is so important? Thanks for coming along today. This is part of the Sage CRM Learning Series. For those of you that are new to it or have missed a few, they're all available online at that URL in the bottom right. You can read back and listen back to the earlier series. We've done, I think, gosh, we must be up to about 7 or 8, I think, at this stage of the year. We've got one more to come this year, and we're looking at doing a whole new series next year as well. For today, thank you for coming along. By the way, of course, you can get loads more information about the product, not only at help.sagecrm.com, but if you go to community.sagecrm.com, you can then spark off in any direction from there, including to help, as you can see there. You can go and have a look at how to learn more about the product through videos on Sage U and YouTube and other places. You've got the Sage City site. I know you're all familiar with that, where you can look at the Sage City community on CRM, blogs, commercial, technical, and a whole bunch more, and lots more resources to help you make sense of the product. Documentation, user guides, admin guides, API guides, and lots more developer tools as well. So the best jumping off point is community.sagecrm.com. For now, thanks for coming along. I hope it's been useful as ever. Look forward to hearing and, well, sharing more information with you next time and hoping that it's equally valuable for you. But for now, goodbye.